A 9-year-old girl points at a woman in the crowd and screams that she sees the devil standing behind her. Within 48 hours, that woman will be hanging from a rope, convicted of a crime that doesn't exist, executed by her own neighbors, people she had known her entire life. And this wasn't an isolated incident. It happened over and over again, for 300 years, across an entire continent. 60,000 people dead, and the reason why is far more disturbing than any supernatural horror story you've ever heard. This is Clusterstory, where we take a deep dive into history to get a great understanding of how we got here. Hit the subscribe button, turn on the bell, like and share this video. The lie you were taught everything you think you know about the witch hunts is probably wrong. You were told it was the Dark Ages. It wasn't. The witch hunts happened during the Renaissance, the age of enlightenment, scientific revolution, and artistic brilliance. You were told it was millions of women burned at the stake. Wrong again. Historians now estimate the number was between 40,000 and 60,000, and about 25% of them were actually men. You were told it was about religion, about the Catholic Church hunting down innocent healers and midwives. But here's the twist that changes everything. The Catholic Church was actually skeptical of witchcraft accusations for centuries. The real explosion of witch trials happened after the Protestant Reformation, when both Catholics and Protestants competed to prove who was more godly. The truth is so much stranger and so much more relevant to our world today than the myths we've been fed. So let's go back to the beginning. The spark that started the Forever year is 1486. A German clergyman named Heinrich Kramer has just been humiliated. He tried to prosecute a woman for witchcraft in Innsbruck, Austria, and the local bishop threw his case out of court. The bishop called Kramer senile and told him to leave the city. But Kramer was not the kind of man who accepted defeat. Consumed by obsession and wounded pride, he did something that would echo through centuries of human suffering. He wrote a book. He called it the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches. This book became the Witch Hunter's Bible. It provided detailed instructions on how to identify witches, how to torture confessions out of them, and how to execute them. It answered every legal and theological objection to witch trials, and it was absolutely saturated with hatred toward women, blaming them for almost every evil in society. The printing press had just been invented. Kramer's book spread like a virus across Europe. Within 200 years, it had gone through nearly 30 editions. One bitter man's revenge fantasy became the operating manual for mass murder. Why it happened when it happened, but the book alone doesn't explain why the hunts exploded when they did. Books about witchcraft had existed before. So what changed? The answer lies in one of the most devastating periods in human history, the Little Ice Age. Starting in the early 1500s, Europe's climate began to shift. Temperatures dropped, harvests failed, famines swept across the continent, rivers froze, livestock died, and people were desperate for answers. When your children are starving and your crops are dying, you need someone to blame. You need to believe that this suffering isn't random, that someone is doing this to you, that if you can just find them and stop them, things will go back to normal. Historians have mapped the witch trials against climate data. The correlation is chilling. The peaks of witch hunting align almost perfectly with the coldest, most desperate years. When the harvest failed, the accusation soared. Witches became the scapegoats for a planet humanity couldn't control. The perfect storm of fear but climate was only one ingredient in this recipe for disaster. Europe in the 1500s and 1600s was being torn apart by religious warfare. The Protestant Reformation had shattered the unity of Christianity. Catholics and Protestants slaughtered each other by the hundreds of thousands. Entire regions were devastated by wars that lasted decades. In this atmosphere of existential fear and religious paranoia, witch hunts became a way for communities to prove their piety. If your village was suffering, maybe it was because you weren't rooting out evil hard enough. Maybe God was punishing you for tolerating the devil's servants. Prosecutors competed with each other. Town councils competed with each other. Everyone wanted to show they were holier than their neighbors. And then there was the legal innovation that turned suspicion into death sentences. Torture. Most witch trials use torture to extract confessions. And under torture, people will say absolutely anything. They'll confess to flying through the air. They'll confess to eating children. They'll confess to things that are physically impossible. And most importantly, they'll name other witches. Under torture, one accused person might name 10 others. Those 10, once arrested and tortured, might name 50 more. The system was designed to create chain reactions of accusation. Have you ever been part of a group that turned on someone? Maybe online, or even in your social circle. It's a chilling feeling, and it has deep, dark roots in our history. Let's talk about the witch hunts. Picture Europe, hundreds of years ago. Life was tough. People faced plagues, famines, and constant war. When things go wrong, it's human nature to look for someone to blame. And for a long, terrifying period, that blame fell on so-called witches. This wasn't just a few isolated incidents. It was a continent-wide panic, fueled by fear, religious extremism, and social instability. From the 14th to the 18th century, tens of thousands of people, mostly women, were accused of witchcraft. What did it take to be called a witch? It could be anything. Maybe you were a woman who lived alone. Maybe you knew about herbal remedies. Maybe you just had a neighbor who held a grudge. Accusations were often born from personal disputes or mass hysteria. Once accused, you were trapped. Confessions were extracted through brutal torture. The logic was twisted. If you confessed, you were guilty. If you endured the torture and didn't confess, you must have had demonic help. So you were also guilty. It was a no-win situation. The trials were a sham, designed to produce a guilty verdict, leading to horrific public executions. So, why did it happen? It's complex. The rise of the printing press helped spread books like the Malleus Maleficarum, a sort of how-to guide for witch hunters that painted witchcraft as a vast satanic conspiracy. Social and economic turmoil also played a huge part. When crops failed or disease spread, it was easier to blame a supposed witch in the village than to confront the harsh realities of the time. It was a way to create a sense of control in a chaotic world by identifying and eliminating a scapegoat. It was also a way for those in power to consolidate their authority and enforce social norms. Women who were independent or didn't fit the mold of a submissive wife and mother were especially vulnerable. You might think this is all ancient history, but the patterns of the witch hunt are still with us. Think about the satanic panic of the 1980s, where daycare workers were falsely accused of horrific rituals. Or look at how quickly online mobs can form to cancel someone, often based on incomplete information or outrage. The technology has changed, but the human impulse to find a scapegoat, to unite a group against a common enemy, hasn't. We call it a witch hunt for a reason. It describes any campaign of persecution against a person or group with unpopular views, often based on flimsy or fabricated evidence. The witch hunts serve as a powerful warning. They show what happens when fear overpowers reason, when belief trumps evidence, and when a society decides it's easier to blame individuals than to solve its collective problems. It teaches us the critical importance of due process, skepticism, and empathy. The next time you see a crowd gathering, digitally or in real life, to condemn someone, take a step back, ask questions, demand proof, remember the lessons from our past, so we don't repeat its darkest chapters. Thanks for watching. If you found this interesting, consider subscribing for more deep dives into history and human behavior. See you next time.